I was looking forward to speaking to Bran about his book Stalking, and basically how he came up to the idea of stalking and basic culture. But one thing I was interested most about, you edited book, you edited Postmodernity and Contemporary Novel. And basically I was wondering, because we talk a lot about those things, how do you get into position to edit such kind of reader? So what happened in your career regarding that?
Well, the edited collection was purely as a result of teaching contemporary fiction in the context of postmodernity, and finding myself recommending the same texts again and again to students, or the same excerpts from texts. Not just the canonical postmodern theorists such as Jameson, Lyotard, Baudrillard, etc., but also the literary theorists such as Hutchian and McHale, who I think have tried to establish a poetics of the postmodern novel. So that's where I proposed that particular collection.
Okay, regarding your book Stalking, you basically in one part of the book state that stalking happens every day, almost, but it is basically and foremost a media construct.
Yeah.
It's a part of media construction. So I'm wondering what happens to the stalking and the stalkers when today, I don't know, 2-3 years later after the book, we came to a certain degree and more increased way of online communication, and basically Facebook for the foremost, and you get that media as some sort of apparatus for stalking in some other way.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think about this kind of
well,
new communication?
That's the area which is not covered enough in the book. I think the whole question of Facebook stalking.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about the internet itself which encourages stalking behaviour, which encourages that kind of investigative impulse, whether it's to Google somebody or whatever. And I also think the thing about the internet in terms of chat rooms, social networking, is that you're almost dealing purely with an ego space, so that you're dealing with a kind of phantasmatic relationship with the other. And I think that's where stalking can originate, that kind of stalking impulse. So you might find yourself saying things or relating to others in ways that you wouldn't if you were face to face with a real person. So I think there's that element. But the thing that struck me about the stalking book was that it's an old behaviour, but a new crime, as one of the stalking experts puts it. So it really fascinated me that stalking hadn't been criminalised or pathologised officially until as late as 1990, and this was as a result of the crimes perpetrated against celebrities in California mainly. So in a sense, it's the kind of stalking had been going on for centuries, and literary history bears this out, because you can see examples from Lord Byron and Lady Caroline Lamb. You can see them in Dickens and Poe, etc. But it's only when it comes to a certain point in our media culture that stalking needs to be labelled and needs to be characterised. And I think the internet is part of that whole kind of structure.
Yeah, but actually the internet also allows you to engage in self-stalking. You Google yourself and it's, what is he up to? What are people saying about it?
Yeah. Basically, one of the questions about that is people get on Facebook and they are concerned about somebody stalking them, but they put their real name, surname, their pictures, and basically, why do people do that kind of thing? Is it related to narcissism or something else?
Well, I always think there's a kind of there's twin impulses which are involved when it comes to stalking. The one hand is that investigative impulse, that kind of right to entitlement about knowledge of someone else. You feel you're entitled to know about someone. But I think the counter impulse is that is the desire to kind of expose oneself, for want of a better term, to kind of exhibit one's private, intimate self without being asked. So I kind of think the two things go hand in hand and are perhaps fostered by our media culture.
And one more thing I wanted to ask you about your two new books, two projects, about Stranger and Seduction of crime fiction, and if you can connect it to your class you did this conference, just briefly.
Well, both in a sense emerge out of the stalking project, because I was interested in, and this is where the stalking project began, I was interested in kind of twisted detectives. And there's plenty of those in Rear Window and Vertigo and so on. You have characters who begin what seems to be a proper kind of investigation, but before long it becomes derailed by their own psychopathology. And then I realised that's almost a definition of the cinematic detective. So that's what I'm exploring now, is what that kind of twisted impulse might be, the investigative impulse. And the second one, the project on the neighbour is and I've been very influenced by Eric's the book that Eric co-wrote with a couple of others. That gives a kind of theoretical foundation, but I'm interested in the way the neighbour is depicted culturally, and in particular how that alters according to space, and the kind of the way that space is represented in cinema and in fiction. So where the stalking book looks at a particular pathological relationship with the other, I'm interested in the neighbour and dealing with what on the face of it are kind of normal relationships with the other, and how those two can become criminalised.
Okay.